Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, Donald Com. I am. It's been 17 years, but I'm still at the city. It kind of sounded like he's been at the city 17 years and kind of left. The mayor touched on the 6 big moves in the climate action plan, and many of you have probably, through one organization or another, had Susan, Mary, myself, and Deb from the city come out and talk. This group is unique. You are part of the Smart Business Challenge. You've been hearing about sustainability for years. You have gone to great lengths. Many of you are gold, platinum, and things like that. That hit home for me. That resonated for me. And my original intent was, I'll just go to all of our current programs. I will go all to the programs that we are thinking about creating. I can just go right there. I'll be done in 10 minutes. And you guys will know 90% of it already. And I thought this group is unique because you've been talking and looking at sustainability. I'm going to do something as a keynote speaker. I've never been a keynote speaker. I want to drill down and hopefully educate everybody in this room how the utility thinks about this. This is you call it a game changer. This is transitional in our industry. When I started with the city, a utility is like a great big battleship. You just start it on one course, and if you want to make a course correction, it's like months just to get a ship to turn. And I think over the last 5 years, especially with council direction in the last 2 to 3 years, we can't function as a battleship. I can't say we can be a speedboat. I can't say that we can, water ski behind it and we're going to be making quick changes. But we're definitely going to be maybe more like a tugboat. Sometimes pushing, sometimes pulling, and we'll see kind of where that goes. So I'm going to take some time, and I want to make this as interactive as I can. So let's see if I can. Am I hitting the end button, Mary? Maybe. Okay. There. Whoops. See. I'm an engineer. I'm not a. And my slides are boring. This is a side note. As I looked at this last night. Susan's got to help me get some new cool fancy slides. So I focused on content and not on pretty, so I apologize for that. So talking about the smart business and some of the challenges facing us. So I got a question. Well, first of all, my goal today, like I said, I want everybody here to be more informed regarding Ames Electric and the way we think, the way what moves us, what drives us, and then relate it back to your businesses. Take that information and eventually, collectively, we can make changes into what we're doing that benefits sustainability, reliability, cost. Those are our 3 basic tenets I'm going to touch on. So, unlike retail rates, so everybody here is under our retail rates. You have a demand charge. Many of you have a demand charge that's $10 and change, $10.64. You have an energy charge that's about 6.44 cents. Just curious, in December, so on the wholesale side, our energy prices change every hour. What we can get off of the grid, what we can buy for. I'm curious, what were any ideas on what the highest and lowest prices were just in December alone? Somebody make a guess. You can either tell me the bandwidth, was it 100 times more? Double, triple? Give me a guess. Anybody? All right. So, thinking that 6.44 cents is your typical cost, in December, the highest cost we paid for an hour, 6 cents is what you pay. We paid $1.72 per kilowatt. In our language, that's $1,719 per megawatt. Our lowest cost, this is interesting, our lowest cost, they paid us, say it again, the market paid us to take the energy. Negative 0.9 cents. So negative a penny. Where in your industries do your suppliers pay you to take product? Nowhere. Likewise, where do you, and I never did figure out you said 5%, I think from 1 penny to $1.72, that's 172 times, something like that, if my math is correct. Now, here's the interesting thing. This happened to all have occurred on the same day, December 23rd. We saw a $1.72 at about 6 o'clock at night. We saw negative 1 penny at midnight. This is the stuff that we deal with when we're trying to provide low-cost, stable energy, and this is becoming more and more apparent. So let's drill into this. What does this mean? Let's see if I get my, all right. So let's talk about our power supply. How do we supply you as customers? Well, we have two what we call base load units. So these used to be coal-fired boilers, but they are now natural gas-fired, and we fire with RDF. RDF is a beautifully fancy name for garbage, all right? We burn the county's garbage, which is a good thing. We have chosen as a community, as a county, not to bury it because since 1975, we thought that was more environmentally harmful. Bury it in the ground, let it decompose, and do that. We've been turning it into energy since 1975. Our plants provided about 50%, about 48% of our load in 2022. In other words, those plants running, the energy that they produced, fed the customers in Ames. The prices, this is kind of interesting. And again, for those that think in kilowatt hours, I'm sorry, our industry talks megawatt hours, so you divide the number by 1,000, or the easiest thing to do is, like where it says 33 up there, put a decimal point right after the first 3, so it's 3.3 cents, okay? Here's the interesting thing. In 2022, our average cost was about $33 or 3.3 cents out of our units. Actually not bad. Some of the things that we're facing going forward in 2023, we're anticipating what, about a 25+% increase? Because natural gas. Natural gas is a huge driver in our generation. We need the natural gas to burn RDF. We'll talk more on that. We have a couple of gas turbines, GTs. Those are peaking units. They run on diesel. We can fire them on natural gas, but it would take some big infrastructure to do that. We only run them in emergencies. That could either be price emergencies. Remember that market, 1719? If I had to pay $17.19, I'd turn one of these things on first at $313. It's like a price cap. That's what we try to do so that you're not paying. It's lovely that we don't have to run them. It's great to have them if we have an emergency. It's great to serve as a price cap. We have a wind contract. We get 30 megawatts out of there. We actually get 36. We have a great partnership with Iowa State. Iowa State gets 6 of the megawatts, and we take the other 30. That provided about 14% of our load in 2022. That's good. Wind is renewable. It's close. It's a little expensive in the way that we have it today. That cost is about $60 a megawatt, 6 cents a kilowatt to, again, convert it. With some MISO costs, because it's not sitting in Ames, we get impacted by, I should explain MISO in just a second, but the cost at the wind turbines are about $60. By the time we get it to Ames, it's about $75 or 7.5 cents. Let me touch on MISO since I start throwing around buzzwords. MISO is a quasi-governmental entity. Nearly every utility in the mid-continent is part of it, and we share transmission, we share generation, it creates energy markets, stretches from Canada to Louisiana. Mid-American Energy's in it, Alliance in it, not all of the co-ops, many of the co-ops in the area are part of it, Ames is part of it, and it actually provides us the opportunity to buy energy from the greater grid and offset some of our other more expensive stuff. I can talk more on MISO in a little bit. Solar, the mayor mentioned that we have our solar farm that sits over by the airport. It's 2 megawatts. 2 megawatts of solar doesn't put out a lot. It's great that we have it, and we're looking at a lot more, and I'll touch on that, but it's only providing about 0.4% of our energy. So let me talk a little bit, one well, I'll get to our generation in a second. The rest of it we buy from MISO, which is the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, based out of Carmel, Indiana. That provided the remaining 38% of our load, and the prices have varied. Typically, the prices we get from MISO are in that $35 range. I have the 45 up there because in 2022, what happened was gas prices went nuts. Gas prices drove the energy market. So where there's a lot of wind and solar, or wind in this area, they were able to charge higher prices because it was more expensive to burn natural gas. Natural gas was in that $3 to $4 a decatherm range. It hit 8, 9, I can't even remember what the price was on December 23rd, at least double digits. Curtis, do you remember what the price was on December 23rd? $27 a decatherm. That's 10 times what we're paying. We're paying about $2.75 a decatherm. Okay, this is an interesting chart. So when we buy from MISO, we buy on-peak and off-peak. Real easy way to explain on-peak, it's Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning till 8 at night. Off-peak is every other time plus holidays. What these lines represent, the solid black line happens to be the average monthly costs. The solid black one, the big solid one, is the on-peak price. And the solid dashed, that doesn't make any sense. The thicker dashed black one happened to be the off-peak prices. There are other years up there. The light blue is 2020, the yellow I think is 2021, and the purple is 2019. The takeaway from this, let me touch on these takeaways. Before I do that, I am a graphaholic. Okay, I love graphs and the data that it provides. If you ever come to Electric Admin, I have a wall outside the bathroom. That's the only wall we had that's available, and I have about 20 charts up there where I'm tracking everything. I mean, my staff looks at me because I'll stand there for minutes, maybe, well, not hours. I'll stand there for a lot of time just studying the graphs and saying, okay, what are you saying to me? What are you speaking to me? So this is an interesting graph. What it's basically saying is that huge rise on the on-peak prices were driven by natural gas prices. You know, the war in the Ukraine started in the February-March timeframe, and then natural gas got tight, and that just drove May, June, July, August, and then it actually started dropping. The takeaways that I would take from this, and the first bullet isn't from the graph, but I have to mention it, and it's something that we are looking at, and I'm going to touch on it near the end of the presentation. Utility scale. Big wind and solar are huge game changers. We've got a request for proposal out on the street right now looking at solar. We're looking at solar on roofs. We're looking at solar in commercial types, 2 megawatts, 4 megawatts, that type of stuff. And we're looking at wind and solar at the utility level. Utility scale is about a third of the cost of putting it on roofs and doing the smaller projects. If we buy big enough, prices are manageable. Prices are usable. Prices will keep our rate stable, and it's one of the things we're looking at. Number 2, we spend a lot of gas consuming the county's garbage, and I'm going to touch on one of our goals that we're working towards in the near future. But as gas prices change, the disposal of our waste is impacted. And the cost of energy is very time dependent. I mentioned it before, but that's significant when we start talking about time of use rates. And this is an area that a utility and a business like yours can sit and cooperate. Okay, another question. Electric costs are primarily driven by transmission, generation capacity, and energy and fuel. In the coming decade, which of these components will impact Ames electric rates the most? So here's the thing. Transmission, no, actually. Overall, AIM specifically is set up very well for its transmission. We have redundancy upon redundancy. Now, if the first person that says derecho comes to me, I'm going to take your portfolio away. I don't want to talk about derecho. That's another animal that offline I'll talk extensively on it. So realistically, though, short-term energy and fuel will be the largest driver of cost. As natural gas prices go up, even though we only burn it to take care of refuse-derived fuel, it not only drives our prices, but it drives the market price. And so it's something that we're watching very closely. We're in the throes of renegotiating our gas contract just to see where we're going to be at. Long-term, however, is going to be the impact is going to be generation capacity. Why? We are getting close to meeting our capacity obligation. In other words, what I'm saying, we've had a peak load of 130.7. That's 130.7 megawatts. So if you want to convert that to kilowatts, times it by 1,000, it's a big number. We have enough capacity to meet that and a little bit more. As we start looking at sustainability, if we don't do energy management right, if we don't work with our customers on when to use energy, how to use energy, and things like that, I'm going to have to build another power plant. I build another power plant, that's 50 million, 100 million. You throw that capital cost into a rate base, that's going to drive rates. But there are solutions. So I'm not trying to talk gloom and doom here. We're going to work to I don't say lessen the peak, but shorten or delay that. And we've been doing an excellent job. Our peak was set in 2012. It's been 10 years since we met a new peak. Side note to this, I still haven't determined if he's kidding or not. My job description, my performance review from my boss says you will not hit a new peak. So every year we get close, I go and shut his house off. Candy does not like that. No. For those of you who know Steve Shanker. But it is something that we manage very carefully. And again, this is going to play into some of the programs that we're looking at going forward. So you're getting an idea of some of the things that are impacting not only Ames, other utilities out there, but if you're not an Ames Electric customer, and I think everybody here is, this applies to many, many utilities out there. So I mentioned that the capacity is important. This happens to be a graph of the 5 top peak days, and I took a highlighter and highlighted that critical time period. There's some interesting takeaways from here. First of all, new peaks, and this is this year we hit 130.5. We were that close to hitting a new peak, and boy did my boss let me know too. I mean, that next day he talked to me in his office. I don't want to hit a new peak. But at the same time, we're planning for it because of reliability and other things. Our summers are our worst time. I shouldn't say worst, but our high load times. We hit a new peak in December. It was fabulous. December 23rd, we hit a new peak. There is so much capacity available. The transmission was great. Our generation was on. Prices actually, for the most part, weren't that bad. But it's the summer. Air conditioning load is what really drives our load these days. It's the 4 to 8 period. So maybe a little nugget or what do they call them, Easter eggs in some of the games. A little Easter egg from a business standpoint, things where you can move energy or requirements out of that 4 to 8 o'clock window in the summer will benefit you because our prices will stay low and it benefits the utility. The key with this, even on the hottest days, look at how low it gets. So our loads swing from about 75 megawatts to 130. Huge disparity between the lows and the highs of the day. Energy is overly abundant. Even on the hottest days, it's abundant. It's expensive, but we will not run out of energy. We can't run out of energy. There's that much generation in the mix. The other thing is delivery infrastructure is very redundant, so transmission is not a key requirement. Let's talk about generation for a second. All generation is not alike. My color choices here were pretty much on purpose. Green is good, red is not so good, so let's talk through this. Wind and solar. Wind and solar is green, it's renewable, we do like it. Part of the downside though, so there are two things that we look at in the utility industry. Meeting your energy needs. In other words, when you flip on a light switch, the energy is going to be there. And we can do that hands down. There is always, derecho, there's always energy available, okay? The other side of it is capacity. So in other words, you need enough capability at the time of that peak. You need enough generation resources to meet that peak load plus a little bit reserves. So if our peak, I'm going to use simple math, if our peak is 100 megawatts, you have to have about 108 megawatts of capability. And it's not just Ames, it's every utility in the area has to have that capacity. And that capacity has to be what's called dispatchable. Thanks.
Is that where you work?
Sure.
Okay.
It has to be dispatchable. In other words, I have to be able to turn it on when I need it. I have to be able to turn it off when I need it. All right? It's probably me knocking on the wood.
I don't think so.
All right. So the problem with wind and solar today from a capacity standpoint is it's not dispatchable. And so you can't just turn it on when you want and turn it off when you want. Solar comes on when it's sunny. If my peak load is at 8 o'clock at night, there's not a lot of sun. It's still sunny in the summer, but you don't get much. So MISO is moving towards a direction, well, the wind that we have today, 36 megawatts, MISO gives us 5 megawatts of capacity credit. So that's what it's worth on the capacity market. Solar today, I think it's about 25%. So if you build 100 megawatts of solar, you get 25 megawatts of credit. They figure by 2040, because the peak is going to shift later and later into the evening, that wind and solar will have 0 capacity credit in the long term. In other words, it won't go anywhere to meet your needs. It's okay. I have up there batteries are a potential solution. Could have sworn I had a great slide that talks about what does a battery cost, and I do. It's coming up. Unit 7 and 8. It's neither good nor bad. It's a good thing that we burn. I guess it is, should be maybe green, but it's not renewable green. We run to burn RDF. However, we use gas. The gas that we use to burn RDF is 20% of our budget. So if gas prices go up, a big share of our budget's going up. If gas prices go down, a big share of our budget should get a little bit cheaper, but it's something we think about. And we currently do have a gas contract that lasts through 2023. And that was signed at a time when gas was $2.75 a decatherm. It has been as high as 8, and I won't ask anybody to do the math. It's currently right now in the $4 range, and we're cautiously optimistic that we can lock in something, at least for the near term. The beauty is it's full capacity from MISO. It's dispatchable. Bad news is it produces greenhouse gases because of the natural gas. Our GT1s, similar. We don't run them that much. We don't have any nuclear, but just to kind of put it up there, nuclear isn't really green, but it's not green. It's not a fossil fuel. So that may be some of the future, that may be some of the generation. It is fully dispatchable, it is full capacity from MISO, but it is expensive, can't build it. There are some plants being looked at in Wyoming. And then there's other things out there right now, hydro. I don't know of anybody here that wants to build a hydroelectric dam. Hydrogen is something coming, coal, I won't even talk about it. Okay, some of the takeaways. All right, to meet Ames capacity obligation, which we have to, and maintain reliability, our existing generation, no matter how much wind and solar we build, we must maintain it. But different than we do today, we must rarely run it, okay, because we're trying to get greenhouse gas reductions. So we're going to have these facilities that are there for reliability and to meet the MISO capacity obligations to function as a utility, but they won't be run that much in the future, assuming we take the path we're going down. As we continue to generate energy from refuse-derived fuel, garbage, pretty garbage, we need to make the difficult choice between rate uncertainty due to the fluctuation of natural gas prices and large capital outlay for a new waste energy facility. We're working with Resource Recovery. We have a waste to energy study going on. We made a presentation to City Council the end of December. And this is a huge question that City Council is wrestling with, staff is going to be wrestling with. On one side of the street, a new plan will provide for CO2 reduction, and that's 12% of that climate action plan. I can't remember if the mayor mentioned, we have an aspirational goal of getting down by 83% by 2030, thanks. I should know this, we talk about it all the time. That's 12%. However, to do that, you gotta build a $100 million facility to do that. If you build the $100 million facility, how do you fund it? And we were talking with City Council, there are basically 3 ways that we presented to do that. Could be property tax increases, and this is through per capita. Some of the money that Resource Recovery and how you recover is through property tax increases. Increases through garbage collection rates. The burning of refuse-derived fuel by the power plant keeps your garbage rates lower, plain and simple. Or we can pay it through electric rates, and there will be some electric rate increases to do it that way. There's offsets. We don't have to burn the natural gas, but those 3 things are what we was presented to council, and we have not come back with any clear direction on that. The other thing, proliferation of wind and solar in the region will compound the need for more transmission. If wind only blows here at a certain time, you need transmission to move it around. So if you like wind and solar, you're gonna have to put up with more transmission. Oh, Mary, okay. All right, blah, blah, blah. This will be easy. I'm getting to the meat of it. Now I've given you the background. Let me try to get to the meat of it. All right, so there are basically 3 tenets that the electric utility is looking at all of these changes. Sustainability, which you guys are very familiar with, reliability and cost. How would you balance these 3 competing tenets? Did I spell tenets right? I'm not sure. I'm not asking for any answers, but this is the thought-provoking question. If you come to me and say, sustainability is all important, I don't care about the other 2, it's a panacea. If you say, I need reliable energy, I don't care about the other 2, it's a panacea. If you say that cost is the only thing important, panacea. Is that the right word? Is panacea the right word? Okay. All right. So let's talk really quickly on these 3 things. Sustainability. We have the ability, we're ready to offer green electric rates. Okay, we've drawn these up for several years. I'm looking for business that say, I want 100% of my energy to be green. We can develop the rates, we go to City Council, get them approved. We can provide renewable green, 100%, 50%, whatever you want, green energy for your business right away. Renewable generation, we've got a request for proposal out where we're looking at rooftop, we're looking at small solar projects, and we're looking at utility grade wind and solar. Transportation, we've got EV infrastructures going in place around the city. Council's been generous. We've got $200,000 a year to spend on EV infrastructure to put in. We've also got rebates on chargers. So if your business has 1, 2, 5 vehicles that you use to drive around, if McFarland was here, I'd say all those trucks that move from one place to another, and you want to electrify them, we want to help. If somebody knows the postmaster here in town, have him call me. I want postal trucks and UPS trucks and any delivery trucks that go to be electric, and we can help. Building retrofits, and these are part of the 6 big moves. I'm hurrying, Mary. So we're increasing, in fact, council just approved it. We've increased our rates on geothermal. I think 4 times, didn't we? 3 times? Okay, 3 times. What they used to be we treated them like air conditioners. Geothermal, heat pumps, air-to-air heat pumps and things like that are the way to go for the future. And we're willing to step up and put more money towards the cost differential between them. Net zero rebates. We've greatly increased rebates on new homes that go net zero, are EV ready, and have electric water heaters, have electric stoves, things like that. We've added induction stoves. If you've never seen an induction stove in operation, our assistant city manager swears by them, and he will tell you all of the things that he's gained from that. Retail solar rebates. We have one out there. We have 170 different customer-owned solar. We're looking at revamping that, putting more money towards the rebates. It may lessen the amount of buyback energy. That's something that we're working on, but we'll have rebates coming out in the near future. Garbage disposal. If there's a takeaway here, and we love garbage, it is a fuel source, but getting it to the power plant is the last thing we want to do. Mary talked about how we want to, today, this stuff is compostable. Put the food over there. Food doesn't make good energy. Food doesn't burn very well. Don't put Morning Bell coffee grounds in the garbage. Give them to the farmers and the gardeners and stuff like that. And then recycle. Rummage Rampage is a wonderful thing. We talked about all of the tons that stayed out of the power plant. The more energy you as an individual and you as a business can reduce and not send to us, the less resource recovery has to process, the less I have to burn in the power plant, the less natural gas I have to burn. So, and there are many programs that we're rolling out in that fashion. Let's talk reliability real quick. So redundancy is the key. We have 3 major transmission lines that tie to different parts of the region. We're looking at adding distribution feeders, so there's always a backup. We've got a project we're going to council on. It's not going to be overhead, but I'm building a power line that's going to go from Bricktown on Duff over to the research park, and it's going to go right through the airport. I wanted to go overhead, but the runway's there, so I have to go underground. Okay, we just finished a project at Tappahallo to isolate, so when an outage would go on the line on Tappahallo would drop off. We've put breakers in at Tappahallo, and we can now isolate that. We're going to do the same thing in 2024 in Ontario. Generation. We have local generation, which is great from a reliability standpoint. With that, we have black start capability. What that means is basically if all of the power goes down around, this is what we really needed in derecho. We have the ability to start a plant, bring it to our base power plant in town, and we can pick ourselves up. During the derecho, we were waiting for others. I never want to be in a position where we're waiting for others to restore power to our customers. There was another one up here. What was the other one? You had another. Fast start. Oh, that's the other thing. With those peaking units, wind and solar are very, very variable, okay? Having fast start generation, so if the wind suddenly goes, boom, we can fire up that fast start generation. Okay. Lastly, on cost, some of the things that council's looking at. Cost, we're looking at advanced metering. We want to offer things like time of use rates. Maybe look at different time periods, interruptible rates. We actually have one of our industrial customers on a rate that encourages them to take maintenance outages between the hours of 4 and 8, Monday through Friday. And then we've offered incentives to then pick up that load at another time, and it doesn't impact their demand charge. So people like 3M and stuff, if you have the ability to shift load, come talk to us. We want to create a rate that benefits you and benefits us. I talked to Mary Greeley. They don't like to do surgeries at 2 in the morning, so they weren't interested in doing that. I mentioned garbage again. Reduce, compost, recycle. Every little bit helps. All right. Okay, bottom line. The utility is changing. We're developing a plan forward. We want to meet our customers' needs at the same time, look at environmental pressures, social economic imbalances, all while remaining cost competitive. I have a homework assignment. What I'd ask you to do, and I think Mary said that we were going to send this out, take what you learned today, and if you have more questions, feel free to call us on this. How does the transformation of the energy sector impact your business? Answer that in your own head. What what can I as a business do to meet AIM's climate action goals? They're very aspirational goals. We're not going to get there just if the city does something, just if some homeowners do something. It's going to take everybody doing something. The third one, and I mean this honestly, we are going down a path, but I need to hear, my staff needs to hear from businesses that say, okay, knowing what you guys are looking at and knowing what's impacting you going forward, this is what you can do to help me. This is, whether it's 3M or Morning Bell or Danfoss or any of the other businesses here, there is something that's probably unique in the way you operate that said, if I knew when I was hitting a new peak, if I had meter information, if I knew that 4 to 8 is your worst time, I can do X. Or can you create an incentive to get me to do this? We need, the city needs, the council needs that feedback, so in this coming decade, we can turn that ship much more quickly than we're doing today.